David Businelli, welcome to Business Profiles. How are you?
Mickey. Very good, thank you.
Great. For our viewers, you are the owner and founder of Studio 16 Architecture.
That's right.
My first question is, what inspired you to become an architect?
That's a great question. I guess from an early age, thinking as far back as I could, somewhere in grade school, I kind of got fascinated with buildings, and specifically more about the way they look, the way they function, being so young. And I guess I decided that I wanted to build stuff. So my father being an engineer, electrical engineer, I kind of didn't want to go down that path to engineering, so I chose architecture. I like to draw, so it was a nice, logical place to go.
Right. Explain to us what the definition of an architect is.
Well, going back to the original Greek, architecton, it stood for master builder. So from that word, and architects used to be the master builder. If you go back in history, the architect was the person who designed the building, who engineered the building, and who constructed the building. Over time, our role has certainly changed, and an architect is now not only the person who designs the building and conceives of the building, but leads the construction process, and also takes on many of the other roles depending on his or her choice for career path. Sure. To be facilities managers, interior designers, construction managers, you name it. There's many roles for architects in society today.
Right. And I would think it's also important that when you're having work done that you think is being done by an architect, it's very important that they are.
That's true. And the point being that an architect legally is a person who is licensed and registered in the state in which he or she practices. So anybody who calls themselves an architect and is not duly licensed and registered cannot practice architecture.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the misconceptions that you experience with clients when dealing with an architect? What are the misconceptions that they might have?
Well, some of them might be that the architect is a great expense in terms of professional fees, and that's not really true in terms of the actual dollar amount being spent on the entire construction process. It really is evaluated and a smaller percentage of the construction cost that you might really know. And also another misconception is something that where the owner might think that we'll just kind of regurgitate what they want. But our job is not to do that, is to actually interpret the wants, needs, and desires of the client, regardless of project size, and come up with a design that will solve the problem and be an enhancement to their lives and to their business.
Sure. Now, I know you're modest, but you are an outstanding architect and have been for many years.
Thank you.
But my question is, in the beginning and during your career, who have been your influences?
Frank Lloyd Wright is my main influence. Richard Meyer is another big influence, and he studied Wright, so that's logical. Frank Gehry is a big influence nowadays, just in the terms of how innovative he is and the way he's able to get things done his way, which is what Meyer and Wright also did in their own way. And I think that just the surroundings that I'm in is an influence. Novels have been an influence. Music has been an influence.
Would you say as an architect that you have a specific style?
I would call my style modern in the broad sense, although the firm has done some pretty eclectic work. But myself, my personal preference is for modern buildings that are of their time and of their place.
Okay. Can you explain to us, David, a little bit about the history of your firm?
Yes. The firm was actually begun in 1972 by Nicholas Salvadeo on Staten Island. And in 1996, I had been working for Nick for quite a number of years, as well as my partner, Cesar Giaquinto. And Nick decided to retire, and he offered us the firm. So we purchased the firm, became partners with Nick, created Salvadeo Associates Architects, PC. Unfortunately, Nick passed away several years ago, and Salvadeo Associates then had needed a complete rebranding, given the fact that now Cesar and I were completely guiding the firm. And so I created Studio 16 to move the firm forward and to further reflect what we had done as Salvadeo Associates.
Just a continuation of what
Right.
was already, so the
Exactly.
foundation was there.
Foundation was there, and it was a rebranding and revisioning.
Right. We often hear the term green buildings.
Yes.
But my question is this a recent development, or have green construction and efforts for green construction been around for a long time?
Well, the short answer is every architect is trained to do a green building, and this was way before the term green building came into play. It began in Europe, I want to say, in the mid-'80s. You would hear that bandied around in the trade press.
Sure.
And it came to be a term used here more and more in the 90s, and of course it's all over today. But really, green building to me is probably the best building that you can get, or best interior that
Why
you
so?
can get. Because we always have to pay attention to energy efficiency, to efficiency of material use, indoor air quality, proper lighting, proper use of daylight, very, very important, natural ventilation, all of these things, proper siding of the building to take advantage of what the sun can do in terms of lighting and heating and cooling. So we're trained to do that from day one, but now it's really in the public eye, and the public expects, I think, more and more their buildings to be, I guess, overtly and consciously designed as green, rather than, well, this is something that we do all the time.
Right, right. Now, as I mentioned at the top, your reputation as an architect continues to get rave reviews, but my question is, what are some of the projects that you've worked on over the last decade that you're most proud of?
That's a great question. I have so many of them. I think my favorites, the one that really was what I call the breakout project, was the St. Clair's Early Childhood Center and Parish Center in Great Hills on Staten Island,
yeah.
which was a radical design for which I partnered with an architect, Stephen Perella, who's now deceased, unfortunately. He was a good friend of mine. And we put our heads together and used one of his favorite theories, known as hypersurfaces, to design that facility. The enrollment of that preschool doubled after that design was complete. And another favorite of mine is the dining room reconstruction of the Marina Cafe.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. And that started off life as an interior redecorating project and the solving of some problems like leaky skylights and window replacement and things like that. But there were so many problems to solve that I suggested to the owners that it would be more efficient to just tear the entire thing down to the deck and rebuild it.
Right, and of course for our viewers, it was also on the waterfront.
Yes.
How does that come into play when you're creating a unique architectural project?
Good question. We had to make sure that the underside of that deck was as waterproofed as we possibly could because of high tide conditions.
Right.
We had to fix some pilings which were rotted out, and that's normal for a waterfront facility. Yeah. That's over the water. The design itself, in terms of the form, should be reflective of the site. And in this case, we designed a double curved roof profile to echo the waves in the harbor. And it's two full sides of glass with operable clerestory windows, which help with venting.
Yes.
It's a quite green project. And I guess my third favorite would have been the VIP car wash.
Yeah,
also
amazing.
on Staten Island.
Amazing. What do you do with a car wash?
What do you do with a car wash? The owner, to his credit, said, the better building I build, the more customers I'm going to attract, which will be better for my business.
Sure.
So we absolutely agreed. And the whole concept behind that was color, light, and motion, a celebration of cars. And I think that's reflective in both the exterior, which is a glazed concrete block material, and the interior, which is skylit and has a lot of color. And it's so impeccably clean. You could probably eat off the floor of the lube center. And I think that's a function of the design also. There's pride in the ownership.
Yeah. Moving forward, what kind of projects does your firm normally like to acquire?
We like to acquire custom residences, both new and renovations. And I'm working on a very, very modern renovation now of a house in Tottenville, right across the street from the conference house. Historical site, water view, fantastic project. I also like to do restaurants, they're a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Commercial jobs, medical offices. I'll entertain a tower or two if the opportunity arises, certainly. But we pretty much keep our eye on a wide variety of projects to keep things interesting.
Yeah, I did want to ask you how your firm might differ from other architectural firms that are out there.
That's a good question, and it's not always an easy one to answer.
Yeah.
But I think that what I've done over the past decade, if not more, let's say 12, 14 years, is to position the firm as a very modern firm that breaks the mold for typical firms located where I am. I find Staten Island a very good place to be located in terms of access to the tri-state area because I'm licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. But we really do pay attention to interpreting the needs of the owner and giving them a building that will make their lives better, or an interior space that will make their lives better. And paying attention to the things that I mentioned to you before. Indoor air quality is one of my pet peeves, is something that we pay attention to.
Sure. When does the job of an architect start?
The beginning, generally, it's after property is acquired, and now the desire is to build project X, whether it be a house or a commercial building or an interiors project. But the job of the architect can even start before that with site selection. I'm involved in a project right now in which the owners have engaged me to help them select the proper site. So we've had several meetings with the investors and with the real estate brokers to look at various properties.
Sure.
And that's becoming more and more prevalent, I think, at least for my practice. And it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Certainly you don't want to buy a piece of property and then have it and say, oh, I'm a little bit too limited for this piece. Now what do I do?
Yeah. How would you describe the role of an architect in society today?
Great question, Mickey. The role of the architect really is to shape society. Generally, in most locations, one cannot build without having an architect. So
simple as that.
Yeah, if you think about it, and if you think about it, that from a legal standpoint, the law requires it, and from the standpoint of getting a building built, you need the architect. We're the creators of the space, and that's really our role. We have the ability to solve many problems, from what to do with the kitchen addition to dealing with big infrastructure and transportation projects.
Yeah, and it's important to mention that when you're doing these projects, I mean, they're projects that people are going to be living in this space, working in this space for many years to come.
That's right.
So why not do it right and creative?
That's right. That's right. To engage in a project and bring an architect in second or third, or to tell the architect, well, I don't really want anything special. That doesn't really it doesn't really serve your needs, because special doesn't mean expensive. And a perfect example is the St. Clair's Preschool. The only custom element, true custom element in that project was the specialized metal ceiling. Everything else is sheetrock, paint, and metal studs, but and some plaster, real actual plaster on metal lath. But those materials are everyday off-the-shelf materials, and it's not a box, and there's nothing rectilinear about it. So that just proves that one can stay within a budget and have something extremely special.
Right. But the architect should be brought into the project at the beginning.
That's right.
Not 3 steps down the road.
That's correct. And also the architect really should be engaged until the very end of the project, because we're also trained to deal with the construction process and manage the construction project, whether we're the actual construction managers or just helping to the process management and assisting the owner with payments to the contractors, actually even selecting the contractors, dealing with that entire process.
Yeah. What's the best part of what you do?
Everything.
It's a real passion, I guess.
It really is. You have to love it, which I do, and I think that every part of the process is fascinating.
Yeah. You also you do belong to and have held positions in AIA, the organization. Explain to us a little bit about that.
Well, AIA is the American Institute of Architects, which was started back in the 1800s here in New York City. I think the first meeting was held at Delmonico's, believe it or not. And I've held positions in the local chapter, AIA Staten Island, And I'm a past president of AI Staten Island, and I'm the current immediate past president of AI in New York State, which represents over 6,000 registered architects in the state of New York.
And how does that help your firm?
I think it helps indirectly with credibility. If somebody would look at the credentials of the firm and seeing a past president of a local AIA chapter and a past president of the state AIA, that lends an air of credibility, I think, to the firm. It doesn't bring work in directly in, but it certainly helps, and it's been an enjoyable part of my career.
Right. Now, if somebody is looking for your services, do you meet with them one-on-one? How do they contact you? Do you have a website?
We have a website, which is www.s16a.com. I found more and more potential clients contacting me due to my website. Of course, numbers in the phone book, but many, many, many clients come through personal referrals. Word of mouth, the old traditional way of doing business. So that's how I'm contacted for the most part.
And years from now, when you look back, what do you hope that your legacy will be?
Well, that I did some good buildings.
Many of them.
Yeah, many.
David Businelli, founder and owner of Studio 16 Architecture. Keep up the great work and many more years of success.
Thank you so much.
Been my pleasure.